Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a sneak peek in my Halloween, playlist. A bit spooky, or whatever. Yeah, now it's less exciting with YouTube now completely prohibiting use of any kind of copyrighted material and so on. So unless I can reach out to some of Ukrainian presenters and get some music, so we cannot gonna have it. Welcome to today's show. We're finally gonna have a proper, I hope, longer one discussion on all of the different things today. As always, I would like to start today by saying huge thanks to the moderating team, and I want to continue educating everyone here and cheering and asking everyone to cheer for the moderating team because they are the one in charge of the fact that you can ask questions to me and that they're going to be good questions, that we can have a civilized discussion without any major trolls popping up. And most importantly, they're also in charge of the Discord server where all of the different news, all of the videos, everything that I'm talking about in my videos gets aggregated and you can kind of dig deeper if you feel like it. So join Discord, and in the meantime, please say huge thanks to the moderating team. They are doing an amazing job. But we're starting today's stream with a bit of a discussion. So you've probably seen the topic of the video, and it is kind of provocative. But I think it has a good grounding actually, because my biggest question was let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. When we're talking about what Zelensky asked in his plan, the only thing that Zelensky asked was for allies to invite Ukraine to NATO. Now, a lot of people start to extrapolate it and try to say that, that means that Ukraine will join NATO. No, that's not what it means. For Ukraine to join NATO, the NATO accession needs to be ratified by every single country, including like Hungary, Slovakia, including Germany as well. So until that question is being ratified by the countries in NATO, the country will not join NATO. And I'll remind you, even Turkey. Remember Turkey and Sweden? How long it took? So what matters here is the invitation. And when we're talking about what kind of actions NATO will take, then the most obvious one is what's the position of United States. And this is where Le Monde kind of came in with some of their dive about the summit that took place. And as it was hinted, again, no official statement, but I'm not expecting any official statements because right now US is in an election race. And in an election race, it is clear that there is one candidate that supports Ukraine, and then there is the other candidate that wants to sell it off to Russia. And Biden, by being just a good team member for Team Kamala, he is trying to not rough up the waters too much before the elections, allowing all of the kind of major publicity for Kamala. And I think that once we're gonna see the election, and hopefully with big hope that there will be a victory for Kamala that will continue the activity strengthening our alliance, continue supporting Ukraine instead of voting in some kind of weirdo that doesn't know where he's at and just stands there for 14 minutes listening to the music. That means that we will be having a continuation of the Biden's policy, and I believe that at that moment Biden will have full authority on actually inviting Ukraine to NATO. And if we can believe this, that Biden overall doesn't mind Ukraine being invited to NATO, which is a very refreshing news. And secondly, French side has also expressed their opinion that they would like to see Ukraine in NATO. So I think that overall, Ukraine joining NATO, we knew from day one how it's going to happen, right? Let's be very clear. Me and like 1,500 people that are sitting here right now, we need to be very honest to each other and say Ukraine will join NATO only if it will win against Russia, right? I think it's honest and we can agree on that. I think this is a clear position. So that's why when we're talking about, well, what's kind of like political steps can happen in before, well, I think the invitation to NATO could really be there on the table as a political move once the US election will conclude. And I think it's going to be good. We know that Scholz's position has been very, very flimsy and wobbly, but I do believe that he generally feels that if US is doing something, he can do that as well. So here I believe really will follow US, and I believe there is going to be a lot more countries that will again fall into the same line. That's my take on the Ukrainian NATO invitation. And oh my God, I forgot to start the Q&A session. So let me start the Q&A session, and in the meantime, I will update you on some of the things that are happening in Europe, because we talked a little bit about the politics in the world, in Ukraine and US. Not the questions here. Yes, there we go. So, but for the European aspect, that's what we're gonna talk about. Oh, but before that, this reminds me. There was a question actually with a similar topic when we talked about Zelensky's victory plan. In my last stream, H. Sorid, at the end of the stream, asked a question. Georgie, who do you think a dark horse, strong leaders with the balls would be in support of Ukraine? My bet is on Romania, because Romania has been a sleeping giant. Romania has a lot of leverage especially in the Black Sea, and as being member of Ukraine. And Romania, I believe, if they will leverage a lot of their location and political positions and so on, and they will coordinate their answer and work with Poland and the Baltic states and the Nordics, I believe Romania will be a huge beneficiary to start convincing the, how do you say, like a southeastern flank of European Union. Sorry. So I believe Romania is the sleeper for who could be the strong leader in support of Ukraine. H. Sarit, yes. Oh, you're actually here. Yeah, there we go. I read your question from the last time, as promised. Miss Demuner, Slava Ukraini, thank you so much for $10. H. Sarit, thank you so much for the Moderators Fund. And Captain Copenhagen, welcome. So, a couple of news for Ukraine. Today is a big night. Today is big evening, big night. Today we find out what the perspective of Moldova is. So, as we understand that, in general, in the modern state of, let's call it Far Eastern Europe. let's put it this way: the Eastern Europe states that are not part of the European Union yet, but would like to join the European Union and express that desire, was Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. And with Ukraine, things are very clear. The people in Ukraine have selected that they want to be with European Union, and now they're paying price because Putin doesn't want Ukraine to be in the European Union. He wants to control all of the Eastern Europe. He doesn't want the countries to have sovereignty over their borders. We saw what's happening in Georgia, and we're now seeing what's happening in Moldova. So with a very heavy heart, we don't have the final results yet, but up to right now, it seems that over 70% of the votes have been counted for the Moldovan accession into the European Union. Well, that's not correctly stated. Right now, there is a referendum in Moldova on whether or not their country wants to join the European Union. So, European Union already invited kind of the invitation to Moldova. They provided the status of the candidate country, and now Moldova needed to confirm that they want to do it. And with 70% counted, we can now see that it seems Moldovans have rejected the option to join the European Union. It seems that Moldovans instead, with about 5% difference, have instead preferred more Putin's proposed way of going forward. Now, Maya Sandu, being a pro-European leader, still seems to be is a front runner, and they will have a runoff elections for that. But I do know what kind of relationship Moldova and Romania has. But right now there is a referendum, and Moldovans in an active referendum has stated that they don't want to be the part of the European Union. And I am this is me speculating, but in Georgia we will see that in Georgia the ruling party that has been corrupted by the Russian money, they have been introducing more and more Russia-style laws, and they have been cracking down. Georgia, the country, not the state, by the way, and they have been cracking down on the protesters. And while protesters for Europe in Georgia are quite loud, it seems that the general general majority in Georgia is following very closely into the Moldovan steps. And this is again plays the same way as I was describing to you about the themes of fear, and how on this channel and in general, I am trying to put some light on the fact that if we allow the fear to drive us, then we're going to end up in the darkest places the world could ever be. Because think about it this way. Moldova selects today its future. They have an option to go for European Union. Moldova is already the poorest country in Europe, and this is well known, especially by the Moldovans themselves. Obviously, like they don't like to talk about it, but they know about it. Like they know. And Moldovans, they are very, like they are afraid that Putin essentially will do to Moldova what it has done to Ukraine. Ukraine is already like a negative example of what's going to happen with the country if they will decide to join the European Union. They will start joining the Western Alliance. And a lot of people in Moldova, not the people in maybe capital cities, not the youth and so on, but there is a lot of moms and dads like from the rural areas and so on, that really are afraid of change, that really are afraid of what's happening to Ukraine. And they are looking at Putin and they're thinking is like, well, if we just want to be safe for everyone, we just need to submit to Putin. And I am speculating, but I do believe that this is exactly what's going to happen in Georgia. And I believe it's in about a week. So we will see whether or not I was right. I hope I am not right, but the fear of that is there. So the tragedy of Moldova is, we know the tragedy of Ukraine. We're going to come back to the tragedy of Ukraine because that's the most important topic. But the tragedy of Moldova is that by being the poorest country of Europe, they now had the chance to start transitioning to something different, to join the European Union, to start having that external pressure to break up that cycle of corruption. Because if you've never lived in a very corrupt country, then it's very hard to convey that feeling of desperation, the feeling of inability to change anything. It feels that wherever you turn your head around, that like corruption is everywhere and you don't even know where to start. And the problem with that is that to break the cycle of corruption, there needs to be an impulse, a push to break that cycle of corruption. I always like to imagine the cycle of corruption this way. So there are bad people, corrupt people that are coming into the political power, that came at some point into political power. They've made bad laws that are benefiting more corruption, which change the way that the country operates and the country votes and so on. And that changes the lives of the people in that country, and the people for the country continue voting for the corrupt politician, essentially tying that noose against around their own necks and establishing that cycle of corruption. To break that cycle, there needs to be a push. Now, there can be a push from bottom up, and then it can push from the outside. Push from bottom up is when there is a popular revolution. This is what happened in Ukraine for a large part. Like, that's why 2014 Maidan revolution was called the revolution of dignity, because the corruption, the poverty, the way that regular people were treated in Ukraine was too much. Like, for regular people, it was no more. For them, it was the end. Like, there was the end of the line. And they came out. And they came out and they pushed that level of corruption. Now, it could have come back, like they reestablished and so on. But one of these points needs to be broken. Most likely is usually the most likely scenario is like when the people that are being like corrupt people in your government are being replaced by some of the people that want to have better laws. So you put some new, better people into the position of power, they create better laws influence how the state operates, and then by the states operating differently, the people then look at it, and then they start electing different kind of people, and then slowly but surely that cycle kind of starts escaping themselves. But it's not given. More likely than not, the outside perspective is needed. And the outside perspective, instead of targeting usually the people, it instead targets the laws. So European Union is a framework of laws and regulations. So remember that news is a cycle, and that cycle is counterdependent. So if a country decides to join the European Union, they are, even if there is like run by a corrupt politician, but they are applying to, they are forced to apply some of the EU rules of regulations, and then these rules and regulations essentially improve the laws in their country, and then because of the laws the country's life changes. The people look based on the new situation of the laws, start electing different types of people. Now, nothing is given, like everything can be broken in this, but this is the way that I see corruption cycles have historically been broken, and this is what was supposed to be happening in Moldova. Now, with them not joining the European Union, that means there will be no external push for them to break their cycle of poverty and corruption. And because we see that majority of population have now rejected the plan for any kind of European accession, now this basically unties the hands of the corrupt politicians, stating as like, whew, no popular push is there either. And that means that Moldovans are basically putting themselves in a continuous cycle of disaster and misery for the next years, potentially decades, with no way out. Okay, sorry for the longer talk, but that's how it is, and that's my huge tragedy, because I really would want both Georgia and Moldova inside of EU, pro-democracy and so on, but fear is hard. Fear is very difficult to beat. And to do something against that fear requires a lot of courage. And oftentimes, a lot of people dismiss that courage. Even I've been reaching out to some of the people in Moldova and asked them, like, have you voted? And the people would say, is like, no, why vote? It's not going to change anything. So it's desperation, because the fear just makes you close your eyes to the atrocities and accept your fate, essentially. And that's stupid. I'm back. Thank you so much for being a member for 20 months. Von Rice, thank you so much for $2. Remember the stolen children? Absolutely. Daniel, thank you so much for gifting 5 members. And Ibak, thank you so much for giving 5 members. All right, let's read some of your questions, guys, because I do know that you have questions. Okay, some of the first questions already are hidden. But the first question that I see, if I miss your question, then write it again. I'll try to pick it up. SNQZ writes, what is happening in Zaporizhia? I heard Russians retook most of the cities that Ukraine took during the counteroffensive. I wouldn't say there was a lot of villages. Like, I wouldn't say there was a lot of cities. There were villages. But, I mean, okay. So the answer is the same that I always is, because resources. Um, it's the same question is like why Ukraine is not winning. Like that's how I'm hearing that question, and and that the answer is the same, because they can't. Like they can't. If they could hold all of the cities and villages that they retook during the counteroffensive, they would. So the question is like, oh, why Ukraine is suddenly losing territory? Because they can't. Not enough resources. Send more resources. That's the whole point. That's the whole thing. And to send more resources, oh, there you go, shameless plug. Let's go, shameless plug. So to send more resources, guys, you need to participate in our slow-running campaign. We started a new campaign with NATO 69 Sniffing Brigade to help the Ukrainian fighters. This campaign will continue until Ukrainian victory, because in this channel, we're going to be supporting Ukrainians no matter what, as much as we can. We're gathering the over 100,000 euros that we're hoping to get for NATO trucks, some Mavics, some drones, and so on. Good stuff. This is a slow running campaign because, especially from my American viewers, I know for sure that a lot of you are donating for the Harris campaign. That's why I completely understand. It's an ambitious goal, but it's also, I'm expecting this to be slow burning goal. So please, if you have some disposable income to spare, and you haven't supported Ukrainians and you would like to get a patch and so on, this is a great way to do it. You know, NATO 69 Sniffing Brigade, super trusted. They have a track record, and we've been doing over 7 campaigns with them, and we've gotten many, many thanks from the actual fighters from the front line. So that's how Ukraine, we can help Ukraine lose less. Will Western countries respond to North Korean escalation or will remain silent? They will remain silent. We already know that, because the escalation has been already there, you know, and the request to say something was already delivered, and we've heard nothing. We've heard nothing. We've heard essentially thoughts and prayers. That's what we got. We got thoughts and prayers. I am not being extremely angry or yelling about it, is because Zelensky met with Joseph Biden, and supposedly Biden agreed to send some larger packages of help to Ukraine, so some additional help for Ukraine will come. And that's kind of like my main desire, is that we get more and more help. Like, we obviously know that a lot of the Western alliance powers are super impotent in their political rhetoric. I've talked about this plenty. I just don't want to be repeating myself way too often and just come down to some angry guy that just yells at the screen, which for the most part I am. But all in all, we see that our current political leadership just don't have the balls. So my only hope is when the time comes to change them, and maybe with Kamala coming in, she will have some other people that can have some harder positions on the situation. Orban must go, absolutely. Dacian Rider, why is everyone concentrating on NATO eastern flank and denying the weakest point in southeastern Europe, coming from a Romanian? I'm not sure what this point is. Is this like this to Romania being the weak point of Europe? I don't agree with that. That's not what we've been seeing so far. Romania has not been disclosing a lot, but they have been helping Ukraine quite extensively, and they have been supporting Ukraine politically, and they have been building and training bases specifically. So Romania is not a bystander. It's not. I'm not sure what you consider it's a weakest point. Maybe it's because you're Romanian. Lime Sloan, did you see Australia sending 49 Abrams to Ukraine? It's unbelievable that Australia will have sent more Abrams than US. Yes, my point exactly, Liam. My point exactly. Like, this is my point about the whole Western alliance. We have the easiest job in the world, all right? We just need to take old equipment, like, or maybe some of the new equipment actually, even as well, and actually send Ukraine what it needs to win, to help equip the brigades and so on. For 3 years, we've been saying is like, oh, sorry, Ukraine. Like, it just accidentally happened that we kind of were not expecting there's going to be a big war in Europe. And so our production capacities were not as large. Our stockpiles were not prepared. Our expectations were that we want to send more, but we just don't have because we don't have things. Now it's been 3 years, and in 3 years we barely moved away from it. Like the factories, some production capacity is increasing, but it's way below any kind of reasonable targets to expect Ukraine to actually win the war. So my point is, for 3 years, Ukraine has been gaslighted by us, stating that just give us a little bit of time, and then we're going to be really supporting you to win. And then for 3 years after, not only we haven't jacked up our production and military support for Ukraine exponentially, there is also right now talks about whether or not we should continue supporting Ukraine, whether or not Ukraine should just go die in a ditch and so on. And that's why I find Zelensky's rhetoric about nuclear escalation so refreshing. Because this is kind of sickening that after 3 years of us barely moving, and I'm talking mostly for Europe, right? You know, because US has their own problems with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris right now with their positions of appeasement of Russia. But European Union, we had nothing. We had 3 years to finally make something happen. 3 years, that's like half of the World War II, right? So where are we? Where is our major firepower? And the truth is that we in Europe, we just want to get it on cheap. We just want for kind of Ukrainians to just figure it out. Like, oh, we already send you some anti-air weapons. Well, just figure out the rest. Like Germany is like, oh, we're going to support Ukraine with the anti-air weapons. Yes, where's the rest? Like everything. More. Because this is also us fighting here. Moldovan elections, a Moldovan referendum today shows that nothing is for granted. No future is for granted. And if we don't get the future secured right now, then we're going to end up when our moms or dads and people that are living in rural areas at some point will decide, well, maybe fighting for these Baltic countries is not worth it. And then decide, well, maybe fighting for this Polish country is not worth it. Oh, wow, how did this happen that Russia is right now already so big, half of Europe, it has mobilized all of the occupied population, is about to invade Germany. How did this happen? Where is Bundeswehr and so on? That's my point. Because that's not the future that I want to end up with. And that's why I'm advocating on this channel to actually do something about this. And yeah. Okay, sorry. I'm yelling again. You need to stop me. Do you think Western leaders who haven't grown balls yet will do so after North Korean troops? No. Fredericia Forlan, will Western countries respond to the North Korean escalation or remain silent? Remain silent. The unforgiven. How can I convince my country, Israel, to get the plug out of their ass, start helping Ukraine with military attack? We are basically fighting the same enemy. Yes. The problem is that Bibi is a big friend of Putin. So it's a very, very complicated relationship. Plus, Bibi is not a very good guy. Let's put it very, very clear. Eric Osterberg, if Trump wins, then I think your friends here in Europe will step up. Well, Europe has already stepped up, Eric. Let's be very, very clear. Like, by this point, European Union and, well, Europe in general, let's put the United Kingdom as well. I'm sorry, I'm a boomer, right? So I'm just talking about boomer terms. I remember the time when United Kingdom was part of our club. But Europe has already stepped up. We collectively supplied Ukraine much more than US have supplied. So all of that fake rhetoric by Trumpists and MAGA supporters is a lie. They should just open something like Kiel Institute statistics for help to Ukraine, and they will suddenly find out that Europe has actually supplied incredibly larger amounts of help to Ukraine compared to US. And secondly, well, the way to shut them up is just saying is like that Australia has supplied more Abrams tanks to Ukraine than US, that European countries supplied more F-16s to Ukraine than US. So that's there. Sitting and thinking, do Do you know what kind of relationship Romania and Moldova? Okay, I already read that. Zarintho, do you believe there is a big risk that the conflict in Ukraine gets frozen like in Korea? How would that affect Ukraine? No, because Korea became a proxy battleground, right? By the end of the war in Korea, and you can correct me on this, like there was already American troops and Chinese troops fighting on both sides. So it was basically codependent on the situation. And Ukrainians, they saw what Russians want to do with them. So for Ukrainian, this is a patriotic war. So this is a war of extinction. So all Ukrainians that can fight and are not supporting Russia already, then they will fight. Whatever they have. Like that's just how it's going to be. QR, hi George, there are a few bugs for the moderators to buy some beer and toast for generous Aussies and the recent donations. Thanks QR, I will send this over to the moderators. I will make sure that they receive some of these donos. It wasn't me. Do you think that North Korea will send 10 to 12,000 soldiers or that will send more and more? I think they will send more and more. Thank you for everything you're doing, Ukraine, Georgia. Yes, I think they will send more. I'm expecting 10 to 12,000 every month. Lars Marklund, do you think we haven't seen the last response from NATO EU because of the North Korean troops arriving and fighting in Ukraine? No, I think that North Korean is not the push that Western alliance need. I think Zelensky's nuclear rhetoric is more in line with what gets to the Western alliance. I think Zelensky need to take more in their hands. I think Zelensky needs to make sure that the Western alliance, Europe, really gets it into their stupid heads that Ukraine is not just going to be bending over and dying silently while they are going to be, oh, so sad for Ukraine, we're sending our thoughts and prayers. No, I think Zelensky needs to say, like, if we go with a bang. So if it's going to irradiate half of Europe or whatever, not our problem. Because for Europe, this is already a war of extinction. Okay? So the fact that Scholz is saying, oh no, if we start contributing to Ukraine so much, then we could end up in a war against Russia. Oh, how terrible it would be. We would need to fight against Russia. Well, that's a bad argument for Ukrainians, isn't it? Right? Saying as like, for Ukrainians is like, oh, but we don't want to get into war. Well, tough shit. Ukrainians already are. So I think if pleads and pleases and begging that Ukraine should never have been doing, but unfortunately because we are so unfortunately because we are so backwards, Ukraine is almost put in a position that Zelensky needs to go around the world and just beg for them to send weapons so they can stop the biggest threat that shut on all of the world order that we knew so far. And we're just like being good cucks. And instead, I think Zelensky needs to make sure that this is going to have consequences if they don't support Ukraine. So that I'm getting really radicalized on this position. So whatever, because I don't see, like, so much escalation has been happening from the Russian side. All right, incredible escalation, like non-stop. But apparently, just sites of children's hospital bombed just isn't good enough. That's not enough blood for Scholz to change his mind. Apparently, North Koreans invading European Union, it's not high enough price for Scholz and like to change his mind. Well, maybe stating that we're going to blow this shit up is going to wake him up. Okay. If Kamala wins the elections, what other things can she do for Ukraine other than allowing long-range strikes in Russia? Send more help. Send more Abrams than Australia did. Send more F-16 than Netherlands did. That's what US can do. Rodent of Anger, do you believe that once Russia coffers are depleted, the money to foreign governments will slowly stop? Good question. Yes, possibly, possibly, but it's not. It's like it's not gonna be noticeable because I think the damage, a lot of damage, has been already done. Like there is a lot already, a lot of just absolutely deluded people and shills that are just taking the most ludicrous positions on Ukraine without them being paid. I still believe there is a lot of Russian influence and a lot of Russian money for sure, but I still believe that that overall, not in the foreseeable future. Like it's not going to be like, oh, Russia stops funding, and then like in 1 month we suddenly have clear and understood internet. I still believe there is enough of shills that would want to benefit because of their positions to support Russia because they want to suck that dictator cock so much. Do you believe that once? Do you think Ukraine should have a similar thing to Guy Fawkes, but using Putin effigies on the Victory Day? Okay, that's hilarious. How long has Orban Hungary got to suffer fear? Okay, now that's so on. Are Bayraktars still being used in the war? Yes. We've recently sent more footage from Bayraktars. Canada, can we have a rant, please? Just did. Louis Zuinga, could Russians cross the river and retake Kharkiv? It's Kharkiv. Retake Kharkiv. Russia never took Kharkiv. All right? Like let's be very clear. Let me open Deep State map, just so we get it. So I'm not sure what you're talking about, for two reasons, and I'll explain right now. It's like, and this is the level of discussion that we need to deal with. So Kharkiv is the second biggest city in Ukraine. I think so. Like I'm afraid that I'm mistaken which one is the largest, but this is the Kharkiv city. So there is Kiev, the capital. I need to zoom out a bit, sorry. There is Kiev, the capital. That's right over there. And then a while back is Kharkiv. And this is the border with Russia, all right? You see it? So it's very, very close. So Kharkiv is located right over here. And as you can see, there is no river in between. So that is one thing. Secondly, Russia already tried, and this is what they achieved. Then they get their face caved in. And then they are crying about how Ukrainians are destroying their forces in the area. Beyond that, when Russia first assaulted, they were able to semi-encircle Kharkiv up about to this area and about to this area. I think that was the maximum that they advanced. And it was like mostly like some forward units. It wasn't like a main force. And then people of Kharkiv rose up and beat the shit out of the occupiers. Like one of the major civilian resistance forces that rose up during the 2022 invasion was from Kharkiv. So Russia never took Kharkiv. So that is one thing that I would like to kind of answer. And then the third thing, I believe you mean Kherson, which is this area over here, which is not where Kharkiv is, which is not the second biggest city. It's a regional center, but it's not the biggest city. It's not a super big city, and it's being constantly bombed right now. Could Russia do stuff? I mean, in theory, they could do everything. However, Dnieper is a very, very big river. It's huge-ass river. So crossing that huge-ass river is not as easy. So they would need to do something to kind of set up and so on. And as soon as they cross, as soon as they take some ground here, well, now we are just repeating the scenario how they were kicked out of this area before, aren't we? We're now talking about Russians being trapped against the river once again. So could they take this? Potentially, but I don't expect them to take it at least until they get a proper kind of like flanking around the city. So until Russians, where is it? Zaporizhia, yeah, there we go. So until Russians take Zaporizhia fully, and then Nikopol, and then here Velika Alexandrovka, Until they do all of this, I don't expect that they will try to retake Kherson, not Kharkiv. So I hope this kind of clears up, and maybe I spend a bit too much time to explaining this, but I really want us all to be aware with the geography and stuff. Zelensky says, oh, there we go, nukes. Zelensky says Ukraine could build nukes. How would this help them then? They can't use them, could they? Will they nuke Luhansk? Would they nuke Belgorod? Russia could hit back with 50 nukes. Can't use. Yes, Gen Consensus, you're absolutely right. Nukes for Zelensky do absolutely nothing. Like well, let's put it this way. So nukes don't do anything for Zelensky in a sense of bombing Russia. Like if Zelensky uses nuke to try to bomb Russia, Russia could just respond and nuke Ukraine to oblivion, and then we get nuclear wasteland instead of Ukraine. We agree on that, right? We're trying to be reasonable here. The truth of this, like what nukes do, is exactly the same what nukes right now are doing for Putin, right? Putin has nukes, therefore he has some weird pressure on our political aspects. He has pressure on Olaf Scholz, he has pressure on other politicians in the Western Alliance that are looking at Russia and like, Russia, nukes, fear, afraid. If they're going to nuke, we're going to nuclear war, yada, yada. So it's like the logic that they have in their heads is nukes, Putin has nukes, ... empty space, ... Russia wins. That's the logic that they're operating in when they're talking with nukes. And what I'm stating about Zelensky having nukes and talking about nukes is tapping in exactly the same logic that all of these fear-obsessed politicians are operating in. Because suddenly they will have, oh my God, Zelensky has nukes, ... What's going to happen? You know, it's like, oh, unforeseeable future. Oh my God, what are we going to do? It gives, without using the nukes, just by Zelensky using that rhetoric against Russia, starts disrupting the logical chains of fear and arguments that they have with regards to Russia having nukes. Now suddenly not helping Ukraine could also lead to nuclear disaster. So now they will be put in a situation not in a like, oh, if we help Ukraine, then it will lead to nuclear disaster. Now it's going to be like, oh, if we don't help Ukraine, then we're also going to end up in a nuclear disaster. Because then we're going to put Putin is going to put Zelensky in a situation where Zelensky will have no option. So Zelensky will bomb everything, then Russia will bomb everything. We're going to have nukes, nuclear wasteland. Everything is shredded, right? Because Western politician needs to take responsibility for their actions, and most importantly, for their inactions. What they need to understand that if they don't want to end up in that scenario where they have impossible choice, like either you get nuked or either you get nuked. No, instead, they need to understand that if they don't want to end up in that scenario, then they need to invite Ukraine to NATO and provide Ukraine with non-nuclear deterrence. So Ukraine can win its non-nuclear war against Russia and send Russia packing. That is it. That is it. So the point of nukes is not the nuking process itself, it's the argument of nukes. It's a rhetoric. It's the fear-driven thoughts that are being so prevalent in the weak minds of our Western leaders. Yes. James Thompson, please, with my mother, who passed away in February 93rd, hateful of Trump's voice even. She was a good woman, mother of 4, grandma, 14, etc., 43 so far. Celebrate our lives, support Ukraine. P.S. I'm 70. US, I don't know USAF what stands for. Like, please write it in chat so I know it. Veteran with 3 kids. Thanks, James, so much for $20. I really appreciate it. But guys, I would really want to ask you, instead of sending the super chat and money to me, which I truly appreciate, but could you instead send money to Ukrainian armed forces? Like, I appreciate the donos and so on, but I don't live a bad life, right? YouTube is not my main job. I have my main job. I'm able to get food on the table for me and my wife. I'm not a person that's looking to get like wealthy or whatever. I don't need the money. Please follow the link that the moderators will link in the chat to the campaign for the Ukrainian armed forces. Please, if you have the disposable income for the money, send it to the Ukrainian armed forces. Thank you so much. Obviously, if you send something extra that you would just have to me, I take it with the most things that I could give you. But just know that this channel and existence of this channel is not dependent on the financial support. Hars L, thank you so much for 50 euros. We Ukraine supporters need to professionalize in our work and political advocacy. We have too little influence in public perception and media because there is a lot of activism, but it's uncoordinated, not effective enough in big political picture. Hars, actually, somewhat true. I was thinking about whether or not we can do something about it. I think there are options to do it, and I have some thoughts in my head. My biggest challenge with organizing something is obviously the time. USAF, United States Air Force, thank you so much, Neuropilot, thank you so much. But I think the biggest thing that we can do on this channel, for example, I already stated that your direct representative is your direct influence, and the benefits is that your direct representative, he has a lot more authority, but he's looking at his at the people that he represents. So, for example, if a person, let's say, represents 200 people, I don't know, like a mayor or something like this, then you send him 2 messages, and he receives like these 2 messages, and one of them says support Ukraine, and then like not a lot of these 200 people send him authorized messages. So now in his perception, 50% of the messages that he received was about Ukraine, right? I know it's a silly example, but the point still stands. The point is, if we influence our direct representative, if we try sending them more messages, if we tried writing them, calling them, asking them questions, how have we supported Ukraine, can we do more, and so on, asking them to actually report and holding them to account of how they are supporting Ukraine, it helps immensely because once they're gonna do some kind of action on our behalf, it's like they're doing the action not because of the one person that sent the message, but it's because like 200 people, right? That's the point of the representative democracy. So that's why I always advocate for the first and foremost supporting the Ukrainian armed forces with the direct donations, because this is just saving lives on the front line directly. It's not going to help win the war, but it's going to help prevent unnecessary losses. And it does help Ukraine keep being a fight. Like, to win the war, we do need political action. Secondly, you need to vote when it matters. For example, the United States is extremely important. Right now, it matters to vote for Kamala Harris because she supports Ukraine, and we must support Ukraine. And thirdly, it's just sharing stuff, just doing advocacy, doing what you can with regards to spreading the message. People supporting Ukraine are a lot more critical than a lot of the pro-Russian shills. Like, they're very, very dumb. I'm not sure if you looked into this argument about how Russia financed some of these bloggers like Tim Pool and whatnot, and then you start reading like how they knew about it, how did this transaction happen, and you're like, oh my God, like, the people are so dumb. And then you understand that people that listen to them are also like the same level. So the problem is that for them, like, they see some kind of a news source or like a link or whatever, and then they're like, oh my God, I need to share it, and not verifying anything, not verifying sources. But we, people that support Ukraine, a lot of us here are a lot more thought-provoking. A lot of us are thinking a lot more in depth. The quality of questions that I get under my videos is incredible. The quality of questions that I get, mails that I get on my email is incredible. It's really, really deep and sometimes really challenges my worldviews. But because of that thinking, we doubt ourselves. So when we see some kind of news, for example, that Ukrainians are doing well, instead of like us just sharing and promoting that message, which would be beneficial for the algorithm, because that's how modern media works. It works because of the automated algorithm, the robots. And robots understand this, like if a news are shared more and being like the keywords, the topics, the points are spread more, that means it needs to be spread more. So when you are sharing some kind of news that support Ukraine and promoting the news support Ukraine, promoting videos about Ukrainians and so on, the algorithm that the internet right now operates on picks it up and spreads it to more people. So you're using machine for yourself, for your needs. All right, more questions. How will Ukraine join NATO? I answered this question right at the beginning, okay? Ukraine will join NATO after the war, after it wins. If the level of support keeps being at the current level, can Ukraine win or do Ukraine need more? I think Ukraine can win. I think if the support is at the current level and it's going to be consistently at this level, not like there's going to be like a dip for like 8 months when there is no support. No, it's like we're talking about being at this level that it is now, Ukraine can win. How will Ukraine join NATO? Oh, sorry. Paul B, do you think someone may set up a I want to live hotline in Korean? Oh, that's a good idea. There's been already like memes with Ukrainians spreading these flyers of like written in Korean. It's like Korean, don't follow the actions of your commanders and so on. There is already memes about this. So even if it's not going to be done on official level, I'm pretty sure there's going to be plenty of Ukrainian fighters that will do this BS because they have the sense of humor. Levy, do you think NATO will take North Korean troops attacking Ukraine more seriously and all the talk of de-escalation now will be set aside? No. Biden, I think, said that it should be a red line. Oh, for fuck's sake. Biden said so many red lines, and mostly for ourselves. Biden supports, Kellen Dunn, Biden supports invitation to NATO for Ukraine. Do you think Germany follows? Yes. Ukraine belongs to NATO now. There's a precedence with West Germany, who joined 1955 while East occupied. East recognized in UN in 1973. It's actually an interesting argument, Kellen, but I think it's only if there is going to be some kind of this push for split peace. It's not clear that we are going to be in that situation. Right now, joining NATO is still not on the table, and there are still countries that will be staunchly against Ukraine joining NATO. Right now, the hurdle that we're trying to overcome is for Ukraine to just get invitation to NATO. Live not on evil. Has the Russian military successfully freed the brigades or trapped forces in the Kurch area? I have no idea what Kurch is. So I think, Zarito, are there something you wished Ukraine would have done different since the war began? Something that Ukraine could have done better? Oh, incredible amount, Zarito. Mostly Ukrainians talk about this. Like, we need to understand that it's not like we're having like this Russian army that is like a mastermind and an Ukrainian army that is really doing bad. Or vice versa, where we have Ukrainian military and Ukrainian state and Ukrainian army that is just like mastermind. They do all the correct moves and they are like, you know, absolutely incredible, whereas Russia is just making errors on each corner. No. War is messy. It's dirty. It's like a bar brawl. I'm sorry that I'm comparing to this, but it's like when there is like two very messy guys by this point. Like all of the excuses for some kind of formularity or rules are now out of the window. There is just like a big brawl. Like there's a lot of like scars on faces, there is like the bruise on the nose and so on. In the meantime, you also struck your elbow against the table, you smash some dishes, you knock over the waitress and so on. And that's how the war in Ukraine right now is. It's so entangled in between that both Russians and Ukrainians have countless ways how they could have done things better. And Ukrainians as well. There is a lot about what's happening with Ukrainian armed forces that I don't talk about because I don't see the reason to, because we cannot influence it, right? But I think it is extremely critical for Ukrainians to talk about them. And they do. And they are demanding that the government will fix them. And that's why government is responding. But also in public rhetoric and so on, right? Zelensky played for so long this good guy. He was really hoping for a long time that it will be other countries that are going to be building their facilities and trying to deliver weapons to Ukraine, instead of building what he's doing right now and building production inside of Ukraine with Ukrainian workers and on a cheaper price, making a price per unit of weapon so much lower than producing an armor shell inside of the European Union, I believe costs like $8,000. The same shell could be produced in Ukraine for about 1,000. So it's like 8 times cheaper, if not more. And that's what I'm talking about. So could there have been done improvements that would benefit Ukraine immensely? Yes. But if you're talking about whether there would be something that would prevent this conflict or resolve this conflict beforehand, I do not think that this was on Ukraine, because there was no other option for Ukraine. And there was pure decision of Putin. And I think that decision was built because he saw how weak the European power response was on the occupation of Crimea. So, no. In that sense, I think there was a lot of powerful factors that Ukraine could never influence. And I feel that there was not much more that Ukraine could have done. Because it's not like Ukraine didn't want to join NATO. They did. But it was Germany that was always blocking the Ukrainian accession to NATO, all of the talks. What are the consequences of Chasiv Yar fall? Chasiv Yar hasn't fallen. It doesn't feel that it's going to fall anytime soon. There are some advances of Russian close to Chasiv Yar. Let me get the map back. I'll show you what I mean. So Chasiv Yar is a city that has been pretty good. Like, that city has been a fortress, mostly because thanks to this area right over here. So this is like a small channel area, and that area has been a nightmare for Russians to cross, because even a small creek is really problematic. There are just a couple of crossings, and Ukraine used mines extensively. But now Russia has crossed in some areas. They crossed in this northern area, they crossed in the central area, they moved a little bit in the southern area. So there is advances towards Chasiv Yar. But if you can look here, like, I'll zoom this in. So firstly, you can see that the whole terrain is like bumpy, right? So this whole area of Chasiv Yar is pretty rough terrain. So it's like small hills, there's like rivers and so on. It's a very nasty area to attack into. There's plenty of places where defenders have the defenders advantage. So for Russians to take Chasiv Yar, they need to put still a lot of effort, a lot of effort. And the most important thing, and let me open something. So Ukraine topographic map. I will just show you Ukraine topographic map, and then you will understand this even better. So it's in Ukrainian, but I will help you translate. So red is high ground, green and blue is the low ground. That's like what they measure. So this is Luhansk, so it's a little bit lower. This is Debaltseve, Vuhledar, Krasnahora. So there is Bakhmut. So this is Bakhmut, and this is Chasiv Yar. So as you can see, Chasiv Yar is on a major hill right over here. So after this hill, there is this line that goes here. So Russians will be able to move north. So if the Chasiv Yar falls, the northern part of Ukraine will be harder to hold. And then Ukrainians will have to hold for Russians in the area around Kramatorsk and Sloviansk and so on. So this is where Russians will try to advance. They will try taking this hill, and then they will try to reach Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. So losing of Chasiv Yar is going to be pretty nasty, but it's not as fast. Like, none of this is fast. None of this is like, oh, if Russia just takes this, if Russia just takes this city of Chasiv Yar, then suddenly everything else just falls apart. No, no. There's still plenty of work that Russians will need to do, and it's going to be a long time for them to get from Chasiv Yar to then, where is Chasiv Yar? There it goes. Chasiv Yar to move then north along this hill line. But it will definitely complicate things, and it will definitely start raising questions on how Ukrainians will start defending Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. But Kramatorsk and Sloviansk is a major fortress. I don't believe that that fortress will fall ever. Like, Russia don't have the resources. They do not have the resources to take out Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And Chasiv Yar has been standing there for a year, by the way. Okay? So Russia was approaching Chasiv Yar at the start of this year, and they're still barely, like, you know, you can look at this. Like, if this is, like, let's say this is the border, the far border of the Chasiv Yar, then Russia still has a lot of work to do. All right. Let's answer some more questions, and I'm going to wrap up in maybe 20 or so minutes. The real question should be whether the West Bloc will stay silent. The question should be whether South Korea will stay silent. I don't think they will, but, well, South Korea, what was it today? Wait. Condemns. What is it like? Today was like the news that the South Korea has condemned the the North Korean troops being sent to Ukraine. So they're basically using the Western rhetoric already, like the not stating we're gonna respond in the most serious manner possible, but they're stating is like, oh, it's yes. Mm-hmm. Do you think Crimean breach can be brought down anytime soon? No, and I don't see why. Do you think that if North Korea sends more troops, South Korea will send military aid to Ukraine? I hope so, but so far nothing indicates it. What do you think the chances are the Ukrainians have already built a nuclear bomb? No, none. Scott Hilderman, if Ukraine is forced to unjust peace, do you think that this would be a huge reason for lots of countries to try to get nuclear weapons? Oh, no. Scott, this is already step that we went over. We already fucked up, right? There is already a signal, a clear signal for countries to get nuclear weapons. Like, oh, that's already failed. Like, we already lost the nuclear non-proliferation. Because already by the fact that we forced Ukraine to fight the war that they did, that's what the message we sent. We sent that, like, if you are attacked by a country with nukes, then they can destroy your country if your country does not have nukes. And everyone will just send their thoughts and prayers, and you will be forced to beg for years to send help, please. So, no, we already lost that argument. The argument about the countries getting atom bombs is just now, it's beyond saving. Like, the argument just doesn't have any feet to stand on. So that's it. Nuclear non-proliferation is dead. DEE dead. The only one that are still believing nuclear non-proliferation is the Western Alliance countries, where we are just circle jerking and lying to each other, making sure that it's like, oh yes, 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 world peace. I don't know, like UN, such a strong and reasonable global power. Okay, UN is a joke. World power is a joke. We are living in a new type of world. Because of our poor response to Putin, we now already are living in a world that is not secure as it was all these, like, what, 50 years after the end of the Second World War. That's it. That era has ended. We need to deal with that. Can Ukraine hang on till Harris wins? Yes, but I really hope Harris wins. We need to don't take anything for granted, please. Please vote. What do you think the chances are that Ukrainians have... do you think North Korea will attack the South and that it will start China around to war? That's what they've signed up to Russia. That's why the threat to the South Korea. That's the argument that I hope Ukrainian diplomacy will make. Because right now, supposedly, North Koreans are sending troops to Russia to help attack Ukraine. Well, it's part of their bilateral agreement that they signed with Russia. Not that the dictatorships needs an agreement, but it's definitely an indication of intent. That's what agreements are in dictatorships. It's indications of intent. It's not the rule of law that matters there. It's what the thought behind that agreement is. And the thought behind that agreement is very, very clear. If right now Russia wins in Ukraine with the help of the North Korean troops, that means that Russia will come there for the North Korea to help invade South Korea. And then South Korea will have to fight both North Korean and Russian troops. That's why I really hope that South Koreans are able to look a little bit with a little bit clearer perspective onto this than the European powers that are still sleepwalking. With North Korea entrance to the war, is it time for the other countries to send men to the war? Absolutely. Should have been done day one. Day one, NATO forces should have been in Ukraine. At least, like, if not even boots on the ground, then at least closing the skies above Ukraine shouldn't be done there over day one. Day one. Isn't the slowness of politician reaction also due to the lack of sufficient efficient counter-propaganda movements? Could do a much better job. We could do a much better job at shaping a narrative. Yes, I know. Is there still hope for a full Ukrainian regain of territory under circumstances which gets more clear in the public? Yes. Yes, there is. Ukraine has the men. Ukraine has the will. The only thing Ukraine is missing is the same that they have been missing for 3 years. The weapons. Give Ukraine the weapons and Ukraine will deliver. How should NATO respond to the North Korean cross already? Okay, I'm going to skip the North Korea questions. Too many. I answered that in depth for this stream at least. I already expressed my thoughts on Moldovan referendum already. If Ukraine was able to fall and Zelensky didn't care about escalation anymore, would be he punch Putler in... oh my god. Yeah. If you had supported Moldova more, maybe vote could have been differently, like subsidizing police. Do they have less need for corruption? I think it's kind of the same argument, like could have been done more, yes, but I think that question is ultimately for Moldovans to answer. What do they want? Right? European Union is not a charity club. It does have a lot of money. And it's a club that says, like, if you want a lot of money, you can join. But if you want to join, you need to do certain things to join. And there is certain work. It's not that much. Just need to be a referendum and voted in favor. And then they can join. Because the invitation for EU has already been sent to Moldova. So the fact that Moldovans have rejected that invitation I don't feel that it's on the EU, with all respect. Like, I truly believe, like, look at this. Look, understand me like this. You cannot, okay, let me simplify it even more. You cannot teach mistakes you made in your life to your kids. All right? You can tell stories about your mistakes. You can express things how they were for you, but it's ultimately up to your kids whether they repeat those mistakes or not. You cannot teach them and guarantee that your kids will not do the same or similar mistakes like you did. That is not impossible. In a same sense, it is for every country to figure out what they want. We already had this exercise in enforced democracy during the late 80s, early 90s, right? When US was in the Middle East. It ended up with Islamic fundamentalism when we tried bringing in democracy into the area. But democracy is not yet, how would I say? I don't want to diminish the state of the population and nations and people inside of the Middle East. But I think democracy is something that collective subconscious need to agree that this is something that they want to have. And because democracy is not natural, dictatorships are natural, because we are pack animals. We need to have like leaders and so on. That's how pack animals always been. It's just because we are going against our animal nature, because we're humans and trying to be better than just what nature made us, which is, if I'll remind you, get into pack, get some sex done, produce some offspring, and die after the age of 30. That's what nature was intended for us. But we, with all of our developments as a human society, building governance, building medicine, building up everything, we go against the grain of animal nature that we've been brought into. And the same way, where we can say we can offer like democracy to countries in the Middle East, in the Asian countries and so on, I believe, and this is where my opinion comes in, that we should offer the opportunity, but it's ultimately up for the people within those areas to decide whether they want it or not. Good example, Myanmar. Myanmar had a democracy. That democracy was overtaken. Now, there's been a significant fight for democracy in the country. People of Myanmar has shown that they want democracy. And if there would not be an invasion into Ukraine right now, there is a good chance I would be working to help or support people of Myanmar. That is because democracy, when it's needed, we should be there. But if it's rejected, if the movement towards it is not as popular yet, I do not feel that we need to go in there and force democracy on the people that do not want it. Not for just our sake, but for their sake, because we have a history of how that happened in the Middle East. There was a lot of questions about it in Ukraine, whether Ukrainians want democracy, European Union, and so on. I think they proved it more than enough. Okay, 10 minutes more and we're gonna wrap it up. Okay. Have you thought about buying British gas masks? I keep hearing about Russians' gas attacks in the Ukrainian front lines. Ken Router, there are gas attacks by the Russians, but because Russia doesn't really have chemical warfare, it's like, I think it would, like, let's put it this way. Why I like helping with our fundraisers and so on is because we are supporting with the things that are having really high, how do you say, bang for buck. right? So that the money that we deliver a truck, and that truck is going to be invaluable. It's going to work like crazy from day one until the last day. It's going to get either destroyed or the war will end, because they're good. And the same with drones. Drones are extremely valuable. But when we're talking about gas masks, it's at best, at the current state, is a situational equipment. And in my perspective, I would much rather our community do as much as we can where we get the best return on whatever we're supporting. So I think gas masks are needed. Everything is needed. But I feel that we can do better if we just start doing with the trucks and drones what we're doing right now. There were expectations of Russian Soviet stocks to deplete in a year. Is the expectation still valid? When we will notice it? It's already been noticed, Tosin Abe. It wasn't expectations until this year. It was the expectations until the end of the next year. So the expectations were next year. I'll repeat that, end of next year, not this year. And expectations is next. They're going to be depleted stocks by the end of the year. Doesn't mean that the armor and vehicles that are on the field are gonna be not present, because one thing is like when the stocks are empty, and the other thing is like when the army doesn't have an equipment to ride on. They still do, but it's already being noticed. The tanks that Russia is fielding, not as advanced. Artillery pieces that Russia is fielding, not as advanced. A lot of the vehicles, a lot of the attacks, many of them are happening not on columns but on dirt bikes or dirt buggies from China. Not because it's suddenly they just decide that it's better to drive in the attacks on the motorbikes rather than the infantry fighting vehicle. It's already seen. It's in the process of depletion. Like the stocks of Russia are immense. Mostly Soviet Union stocks, because this was the stocks that the Soviet Union accumulated for over 50 years as a second world superpower to fight the first world superpower. And all of those stocks that the Soviet Union accumulated to fight the rest of the world are now being sent to attack Ukraine, where Ukraine within like 3 years, I can say now, within 3 years, has pretty much reduced these over 50 years of accumulation of stock, of weapons and ammunition and everything. In 3 years, they're reducing it to zero. Incredible. Impossible. If you want to know the actual situation, you can go check out the videos by a YouTuber named Cover Cabal. There's also a couple of guys on Shitter. One is nicknamed Jumpy, and there are a couple of others, and Heimarst, two of them. Like I'll show you. Wait, I'll show you on Shitter, so you know. So there is Jumpy. So he has this dwarf. So his handle is @Johnp. It's funny because he's Jumpy, but it's with N. So Johnp99. So this guy keeps the stocks, and he has the Excel spreadsheets attached like this. There is the Excel spreadsheet with like the full stocks of the current remaining vehicles on stockpiles. But don't just take these numbers for granted. There is actually a lot more story here to disclose. I can answer that. So John P. And then there is Heimarst. Let's see, we can Heimarst. So this guy, Heimarst, he also counts stockpiles and so on. So they are like working together often, and they are incredible at counting the existing stocks of Russians. They doing an incredible job. So I can only recommend you guys so you can follow them and see their work through. So if you wonder, what is Ukraine's biggest strength? What's Russia's biggest strength? Russia's biggest strength is that it's a dictatorship and they have docile population. So it's like a dream scenario for a dictator. Like you can do anything and population says nothing to you. And Ukraine's biggest strength is stubbornness. Just how incredibly stubborn they are and about resisting to Russians. I think that's incredible. Why, if Ukraine has a manpower shortage, does it not conscript women and citizens of 18 to 25 years old? Hank, my question is, why do you think Ukraine should kill all of their future? Why are you interested in killing more Ukrainians? Right? The question should be, why are we not supplying enough equipment so that shortage of manpower is not as noticeable for Ukrainians? Because shortage of manpower can be overcome if there is enough ammunition. I don't see no ammunition. So my answer to that is instead of yelling and saying, why don't Ukraine kills more of their young children and their and the future that they're fighting for, that a lot of the 40 years old are fighting for. My question is, why are we not doing enough so that we would prevent, first and foremost, that Ukraine end up in this situation where they have shortage? Because for 3 years, we were not supplying enough help. What's the chance of Ukraine to get Swedish Gripens? Pretty high. Is Ukraine capable of manufacturing a nuclear bomb? Yes. Assuming the US, UK, France don't help them, can they build their own? Yes. Deadly 2. How long until you think China moves in on Taiwan because of our weak Ukrainians? I give them under 2 years. China has serious economic issues right now. Serious economic issues. They are not going to be solved by the quick and easy war. Do you think NATO is another UN? What kind of question is this? If Russia attacks some Baltic country, do you think NATO will respond immediately or try to preserve the Western sons? Will use a dirty bomb as... Okay, this is like... sorry, Tosanabe, this is like a word salad. Is NATO UN? No. Will the countries respond to the Russian aggression? Some, but not all. Will it drag the conflict further on? Yes. Will it be the end of civilization and we're just going to nuke each other? No. That's not how wars work, and that's not what kind of war we should expect. Poland were losing out, sending troops back in May. What do you think there are the chances they will, now that they sent? So Poland is prevented to send troops to Ukraine because of the push from Germany and the United States. Basically, Germany and the United States are restricting Poland and the Baltic states to do any kind of these activities. Jason 5, because of so many red lines have been crossed, do you think China may be emboldened? Okay, we already talked about this. It's funny that we finished North Korea and now we move to China. Are the French planes that are coming as useful as the F-16s? Yes. NATO doesn't even need to send people, they just need to send Air Force. True. Do you think Kaliningrad will break away from Russia? Don't know, don't care. Mr. Wolfhard, Russia attacked Ukraine from Belarus without the West regarding Belarus as directly in the war. Could Ukraine attack from another country as well? And I was like, okay, we're going into the fantasy fiction here. No. Dild Hobanik, what are the consequences of Vuhledar falling? Not as much anymore. So there used to be an issue with the Vuhledar because there was a rail line near Vuhledar, and Ukrainians holding Vuhledar was very relevant because they prevented Russians from utilizing that rail line that went kind of south along the southern Russian controlled territory of Ukraine. But since then, Russia have built another rail line that just goes along the coast on the south, away from Vuhledar. So right now there is like, Vuhledar doesn't have that big of benefit, but it will allow Russian logistics to operate a little bit better. Why hasn't Ukraine taken over the weapon storage in Moldova that Russia are controlling? Because A, Ukraine is not going to invade a neighboring country. Okay, Moldova never asked Ukraine to help them resolve question with Transnistria, so Ukraine is not doing it, and Moldova is not a hostile nation to Ukraine. Secondly, we know all well that stockpile is satcheled. As soon as Ukrainians would try to take over that stockpile, it will be blown up. That will be huge devastation. Empty nest reimagined journey. Do you think it's worthwhile to encourage North Koreans to defect, similar to how the Russians were encouraged to surrender earlier in the war? Yes, and I think it's going to be very much more beneficial than Russian. I think North Koreans will be more acceptable to breaking rank. But I still believe that ultimately Russia fights this war with cannon fodder, so I'm expecting the North Koreans will just going to be another type of cannon fodder, and cannon fodder has no say. And last question, have you heard any updates in regards to release of Ukrainian children that Putin kidnapped? No, Russia must Russia must lose the war, so Ukraine must win the war, so that the Ukrainian children will come back. That's the only way forward. There is no other option. Ukraine must win. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being with this stream. Let me double check. Yes, no more super chats. Video coming tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. Slava Ukraini. I love you, and I'll see you next time.